Nashville has always been painted as the heart of country music, a place where legends rise, songs heal, and dreams come true. But behind the glittering stage lights, another story unfolded. Power struggles, jealousy, and backroom deals shaped careers just as much as talent. In this video, we uncover the shocking truth about country legends who secretly sabotaged other singers' careers, revealing how some of Nashville's biggest icons may have pulled strings to hold others back. Porter Wagoner. Porter Wagoner was once one of Nashville's most celebrated stars. Known for his flashy rhinestone suits and for bringing country music to television audiences across America, he embodied the charm and glamour of the Grand Ole Opry. But behind the dazzling smile and upbeat stage presence, Porter's ambition and control created one of the most controversial rifts in country music history. His story is a reminder that not every legend wanted to share the spotlight. When Dolly Parton joined the Porter Wagoner Show in 1967, it seemed like a perfect partnership. Dolly was the fresh voice, the young talent Porter needed to keep his show alive. For a while, it worked beautifully. Porter gave Dolly national exposure, and together they created a beloved duo. But as Dolly's star rose, so did Porter's fear of losing control. Nashville insiders later whispered that Porter didn't just mentor Dolly, he tried to keep her under his thumb. By the early 1970s, Dolly's talent was undeniable. Her songwriting, her charisma, her drive, she was destined to become a superstar. Yet Porter resisted her attempts to step out on her own. He pressured her to stay on the show, to continue as his partner, even when she was ready to launch a solo career. Industry accounts describe Porter using every tool at his disposal to hold her back, from contracts that tied her down to public comments designed to make her seem ungrateful. The breaking point came in 1974, when Dolly finally made the painful decision to leave Porter's show. She even wrote, "I Will Always Love You," as a farewell to their partnership, a song that would become one of the greatest in country music history. But Porter didn't take the separation lightly. He sued Dolly for breach of contract, a move many saw as a last attempt to sabotage her independence. Although Dolly eventually triumphed, carving out one of the most successful careers in entertainment history, Porter's role left a shadow. Fans still debate whether he was a mentor betrayed or a legend unwilling to let go. What's certain is that his efforts to keep Dolly under control revealed a darker truth about Nashville. Even legends could use their power to block others from shining. In the end, Porter Wagoner's name remains tied to one of country music's most dramatic struggles. His story stands as both a cautionary tale and a stark example of how the path to stardom in Nashville was never free of sabotage. Buck Owens, the king of the Bakersfield sound, was a force who reshaped country music in the 1960s. With his sharp Telecaster twang and a style that rejected Nashville polish, he brought grit, edge, and authenticity back to the genre. Hits like Act Naturally and Love's Gonna Live Here made him a superstar, and his partnership with the Hee Haw television show cemented his status as a household name. But behind the charisma and groundbreaking sound, Owens had a reputation for controlling every inch of his empire, even if it meant blocking others from rising. The Bakersfield sound was more than just music. It was a movement. Young artists from California to Texas wanted to ride the wave Buck created. But those who tried often found themselves shut out. Owens reportedly ran his band and his business with an iron fist. Musicians whispered that if you wanted to succeed in Bakersfield, you either played by Buck's rules or you didn't play at all. One of the clearest examples was his relationship with band members. Talents like Don Rich, who became Buck's right-hand man, were allowed to shine only within the framework Buck controlled. Other musicians, however, described being pushed aside when they threatened to step into the spotlight. Buck was known to demand loyalty, and anyone who sought a career outside his shadow found doors mysteriously closed. Owens also had enormous influence through his publishing and business dealings. He bought radio stations, controlled rights, and held sway over record labels. Aspiring singers who clashed with him discovered that opportunities could disappear overnight. Some critics accused him of hoarding power in Bakersfield to ensure no one could rival his dominance. Perhaps the most telling aspect of Owens' approach was how he defended his territory. He didn't just compete, he shut out competitors. By monopolizing stage time, television exposure, and even songs, Buck effectively sabotaged the momentum of other artists who might have challenged him. While Nashville played its politics in the South, Buck ran his own kingdom out west, and it was no less ruthless. In the years after his death, fans continued to celebrate Buck Owens as a pioneer, but those who lived in his orbit remembered something more complicated. He was a genius innovator, but also a gatekeeper who made sure only a select few could rise. His story is a reminder that even the architects of new sounds sometimes use their power to silence other voices. Bạn có muốn mình viết tiếp nhân vật số 3 Faron Young theo cùng phong cách 454 không? Faron Young, nicknamed the Hillbilly Heartthrob, was one of the brightest voices in country music during the 1950s and 1960s, known for his smooth honky-tonk sound and unforgettable hits like Hello Walls and If You Ain't Lovin', You Ain't Livin'. He built a career that placed him among Nashville's elite. On stage, he was charming, witty, and endlessly entertaining. Offstage, however, Faron carried a darker reputation, one fueled by his temper, his drinking, and his willingness to block others when he felt threatened. Young's success gave him enormous influence in Nashville. He was a founding member of the Country Music Association and a fixture at the Grand Ole Opry. Yet younger artists often found him more of a rival than a mentor. Stories circulated that Faron used his connections to edge out up-and-coming performers who competed for the same honky-tonk audience. He didn't like being challenged, and when he felt his spotlight dimming, he could turn ruthless. One of the most striking accounts came from the 1960s, when Faron allegedly discouraged radio stations from playing certain new acts. Insiders claimed that if a young singer was stealing attention, Faron would call in favors to ensure their records were buried on playlists. For an artist trying to break into Nashville's closed system, that kind of sabotage was devastating. His reputation backstage was equally intimidating. Faron's sharp tongue and quick temper often left others walking on eggshells. Some musicians who tried to branch out from his band recalled how difficult he made it for them to succeed on their own. He wanted loyalty, and anyone who stepped outside his orbit risked finding opportunities mysteriously vanish. Even his peers sometimes became targets. Faron famously clashed with other stars, and the disputes weren't always friendly competition. He could turn on fellow legends if he felt disrespected, and more than one singer believed their career had been stalled because they crossed him. Though Nashville insiders rarely spoke openly, the whispers about Faron's behind-the-scenes tactics followed him throughout his life. Despite his flaws, Faron Young's voice and charisma left an undeniable mark on country music. But his legacy is haunted by the perception that he not only entertained millions, but also stood in the way of others chasing the same dream. His story reflects a harsh reality of Nashville. Talent alone wasn't enough. If someone powerful decided to pull strings against you, your career might never take off. Faron remains a complex figure, beloved by fans for his songs, but remembered in Nashville circles as a man whose ambition and volatility sometimes turned into sabotage. Ray Price. Ray Price was one of the most respected figures in country music, a man whose smooth baritone and innovative arrangements transformed the genre. With classics like Crazy Arms and For the Good Times, he earned the nickname the Cherokee Cowboy and built a reputation as both a trendsetter and a traditionalist. But behind his polished voice and musical genius, Ray carried a reputation that was far more complicated. To some in Nashville, he wasn't just a competitor. He was a gatekeeper who knew how to keep rivals in check. In the early 1950s, Ray inherited Hank Williams' band, the Drifting Cowboys, after Hank's untimely death. That connection gave him instant credibility, but it also put him in a position of power. As Ray developed his career, he became known for surrounding himself with top talent, musicians who would later become legends in their own right, like Willie Nelson and Roger Miller. Yet those same musicians often found themselves trapped under Ray's shadow. While he gave them exposure, he also tightly controlled their careers, making it difficult for them to branch out on their own terms. One of the most talked about aspects of Ray's career was his ability to claim songs that others wanted. Industry whispers suggested that when Ray had his eye on a tune, few dared to challenge him. A young songwriter could easily see their best material recorded by Ray, leaving them with little leverage to build a name for themselves. In Nashville, that kind of influence could make or break an entire career. Ray's transition in the 1960s from honky-tonk to the lush Nashville sound only deepened the divide. Traditionalists felt betrayed, while younger artists hoping to push boundaries found Ray standing firmly in their path. His status with record labels and radio programmers gave him enormous sway, and he wasn't shy about using it. Competing singers who tried to modernize country in their own way sometimes found doors closed because Ray had already set the direction. Despite the controversies, Ray Price remained admired by millions. To his fans, he was a trailblazer who elevated country music with elegance and class. But to those struggling to break through, he could seem like a barrier rather than a bridge. His careful control over his career and his willingness to pull strings when threatened made him both a hero and a saboteur. Ray's story is a reminder that Nashville's legends often had two sides: the artist who gave the world timeless music and the power player who ensured their place on top, even if it meant holding others down. George Jones, known simply as the Possum, is often hailed as the greatest voice in country music history. His emotional delivery on songs like He Stopped Loving Her Today and The Grand Tour made him a legend, admired by fans and peers alike. But while George's artistry was beyond question, his personal life and behind-the-scenes dealings painted a far more complicated picture. For some, Jones wasn't just a singer battling demons. He was a powerful figure who could quietly sabotage others in order to stay ahead. Throughout his career, George struggled with alcoholism and erratic behavior, earning him the infamous nickname No-Show Jones for missed concerts. But what many outsiders didn't realize was that, despite his chaos, George maintained a network of influence in Nashville's tight-knit circles. His connections with record executives, producers, and radio programmers meant he had leverage, and he sometimes used that leverage against rivals. Industry whispers suggested George could be territorial when it came to songs. Songwriters who offered him material risked losing their chance if they also pitched the same song to another artist. If Jones wanted it, the others knew better than to fight him. A few younger singers quietly complained that their best opportunities vanished the moment George stepped in. Even his relationships with fellow stars could turn sour. During his turbulent marriage and musical partnership with Tammy Wynette, some accused George of using his clout to edge out competing male-female duos who threatened their dominance. With Tammy by his side, George was half of country's power couple, and few dared to challenge them openly. Behind closed doors, though, resentment brewed among those who felt overshadowed. Jones's volatile reputation also played into the sabotage narrative. His unpredictable outbursts and grudges could spill into business. There were stories of him discouraging promoters from booking singers he disliked, or persuading radio contacts to give his records priority. For an up-and-coming artist, being on the wrong side of George Jones could mean months, or even years, of stalled progress. Yet for all his flaws, George Jones remains a paradox. Fans remember the raw soul in his voice, not the backroom battles. To many, he embodied the very heart of country music. But to those caught in his orbit, his influence was a double-edged sword, capable of lifting careers up or quietly pushing them down. In the end, Jones's story reminds us that even the most gifted voices carried shadows. His music touched millions, but his power in Nashville also left behind whispers of sabotage, showing once again how fragile a singer's path could be when legends pulled the strings. Tammy Wynette, forever remembered as the first lady of country music, built an empire on heartache. Her signature hit Stand By Your Man became both an anthem and a lightning rod, cementing her as one of the most influential female artists Nashville ever produced. But behind the tragic ballads and glamorous image, Tammy wielded a level of influence that sometimes went beyond competition. For certain singers who tried to rise alongside her, Tammy's presence wasn't just intimidating, it could be suffocating. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, Tammy Wynette stood at the peak of country music. Her string of chart-topping hits, combined with her highly publicized marriage to George Jones, made her part of Nashville's ultimate power couple. Together, they commanded record labels, television programs, and national tours. Anyone who threatened that dominance risked being quietly pushed aside. Industry insiders whispered that Tammy, though beloved by fans, could be fiercely protective of her spotlight. Stories circulated of her clashing with other female singers, particularly those younger and on the rise. While public appearances often painted her as gracious, backstage accounts told of cold shoulders and political maneuvering that kept rivals at bay. For some, the doors to major opportunities seemed to close whenever Tammy's name was involved. Her business acumen also played a role. Tammy worked closely with managers and executives, ensuring she had control over songs, bookings, and stage appearances. In an era when women often struggled for equal footing, Tammy not only fought her way to the top, but also guarded her position fiercely. If a new female voice threatened to take airplay or stage time, Tammy's camp knew how to protect her brand, even if it meant the other singer's career stalled. Her partnership with George Jones magnified this influence. Together, they were Nashville royalty, and promoters were reluctant to book acts that could compete with their draw. Some artists later admitted that being in their shadow was like standing in permanent eclipse. The Wynette-Jones empire was too powerful to challenge openly, so whispers of sabotage remained behind closed doors. And yet, Tammy's legacy is not one-dimensional. She was a trailblazer for women in country music, opening doors even as she guarded her own fiercely. Fans continue to cherish her voice, her vulnerability, and her ability to translate personal pain into timeless songs. But those who lived through Nashville's cutthroat years still remember another side of Tammy Wynette, the legend who, intentionally or not, sometimes kept others from stepping into the spotlight she commanded. Loretta Lynn. Loretta Lynn, known worldwide as the coal miner's daughter, became one of the most powerful female voices in country music history. Her songs spoke for working-class women, tackling subjects Nashville often avoided: birth control, divorce, cheating men, with an honesty that made her a pioneer. Hits like Don't Come Home A-Drinkin' and Coal Miner's Daughter secured her crown as country's leading lady. Yet, as her influence grew, so did whispers that Loretta, like other legends before her, wasn't always generous in helping the next generation step into the spotlight. By the late 1960s, Loretta was not only an icon, but also an institution. She won awards year after year and held steady dominance on the charts. For younger female singers trying to break into Nashville, competing with Loretta was nearly impossible. Industry insiders hinted that Loretta's camp worked hard to keep her position secure, sometimes by ensuring up-and-comers didn't get the same access to radio play or prime tour slots. Her fierce independence also made her wary of rivals. Loretta had fought her way to the top from the hollers of Kentucky, and she knew how fragile fame could be. She was determined never to be pushed aside, and that determination sometimes translated into strategic coldness toward new talent. Several rising female artists admitted that Loretta could be distant or even dismissive backstage, rarely offering mentorship. In Nashville's cutthroat environment, that silence felt like sabotage. Even her collaborations highlighted the tension. While Loretta found success in duets with Conway Twitty, other female singers often struggled to gain similar visibility. Some whispered that Loretta's star power was so overwhelming that she subtly blocked attempts to create a new Loretta. If record labels or producers tried to position another woman as a potential rival, those plans rarely gained traction. Still, Loretta's story is complex. She broke barriers for women in country music at a time when few dared to speak out, and her bravery paved the way for countless artists. But with that role came the weight of guarding her throne. Whether consciously or not, Loretta Lynn became both a hero and a gatekeeper, a woman who inspired millions while also casting a long shadow over those who hoped to follow in her footsteps. Loretta's legacy remains untouchable in the eyes of her fans. Yet for those who tried to climb the same ladder during her reign, she was not just the coal miner's daughter. She was the queen whose power could keep other voices quiet. Merle Haggard. Merle Haggard, the poet of the common man, rose from a troubled youth and prison time to become one of country music's most celebrated voices. Songs like Okie from Muskogee and Mama Tried defined not only a generation of fans, but also a new direction in storytelling. Haggard embodied grit, rebellion, and authenticity, qualities that made him a cornerstone of the outlaw movement. Yet, Behind his rough charm and undeniable genius, Merle was also known as a fierce competitor who sometimes worked to keep others from sharing his stage. Coming out of Bakersfield in the 1960s, Merle was part of a movement that rejected Nashville's polished sound. But unlike Buck Owens, who opened the door for him, Merle wasn't always eager to extend the same hand to the next wave of talent. Insiders remembered that Merle, once established, became protective of his place within the outlaw and honky-tonk circuits. He wanted to remain the voice of authenticity, and when others threatened that image, he could be ruthless. One of the most common stories revolved around songs. Haggard had an instinct for spotting hits, and when he wanted a tune, he usually got it. Songwriters knew that handing a track to Merle guaranteed attention, but it also meant no one else would get a shot. Younger artists quietly grumbled that Merle cornered the best material, leaving them with scraps. In a business where the right song could launch a career, this kind of control could stop someone cold. On the road, Merle also commanded loyalty. His band, The Strangers, became legendary, but musicians who dreamed of stepping out on their own rarely found his blessing. Some described his leadership style as domineering, designed to keep talent locked in place rather than risk them becoming competition. Even in collaborations, Merle's name almost always overshadowed his partners, and promoters knew better than to challenge his dominance. What made Merle particularly intimidating was his mix of influence and attitude. He had credibility with fans, respect from peers, and a reputation for not backing down. That combination meant few dared to cross him. In Nashville and beyond, it was quietly understood. If Merle didn't like you, your path could get a lot harder. Yet despite the whispers of sabotage, Merle Haggard remains one of country's most beloved figures. His music gave a voice to the working man, and his authenticity set him apart. Still, his determination to guard his throne left scars on others' careers. Merle's story reveals the paradox of country legends. They could inspire millions, even while quietly shutting doors on those who hope to follow in their footsteps. Hank Williams Jr., the son of the legendary Hank Williams, carried a last name that was both a blessing and a burden. From the start, Nashville expected him to follow in his father's footsteps, and for years he performed Hank Sr.'s songs almost as an imitation. But when he broke away and forged his own sound, blending country with Southern rock, he carved out a career that was uniquely his. Songs like A Country Boy Can Survive and Family Tradition made him an icon in his own right. Yet with that power came stories that Hank Jr. didn't just defend his territory. He sometimes sabotaged those who dared to step too close. By the 1980s, Hank Jr. had become a dominant force. He filled arenas, sold millions of records, and became the face of rowdy, rebellious country. But younger artists trying to follow the same Southern rock country path quickly learned it wasn't easy with Hank Jr. at the top. Insiders suggested he used his influence with labels and promoters to protect his lane. If an artist threatened to outshine him, opportunities mysteriously disappeared. One of the strongest areas of control was live touring. Promoters wanted Hank Jr. because he guaranteed ticket sales. But his team often dictated lineups, making sure openers were no real threat. Several rising singers later admitted that opening for Hank Jr. meant exposure, but it also meant being kept in a box, unable to compete for the spotlight. His swagger and wild stage presence left little room for anyone else to shine. Hank Jr.'s powerful media presence also added to his grip. His rowdy, controversial image earned him a loyal fan base, and with television deals and political connections, he had more leverage than most. Some radio insiders hinted that when Hank Jr. wanted airtime, stations delivered, often at the expense of new acts fighting for space on the charts. Like many legends, Hank Jr. was complex. His desire to escape his father's shadow fueled his determination to dominate, and in doing so, he built a legacy unlike any other. But in Nashville's competitive ecosystem, his rise often came at the cost of others. Whether through intentional maneuvering or simply the weight of his name and influence, Hank Williams Jr. became a gatekeeper whose shadow was difficult to escape. Today, fans remember Hank Jr. as the larger-than-life rebel who redefined country music for a new generation. Yet the untold stories suggest another side, the powerful figure who made sure no one could topple his reign, even if it meant holding other singers back. Conway Twitty. Conway Twitty was one of the most versatile artists country music ever knew. He began in rock and roll, scoring a massive hit with It's Only Make Believe in 1958, before making the leap into country during the late 1960s. What followed was an astonishing run: 40 number-one singles, countless awards, and an enduring partnership with Loretta Lynn that made them one of the most beloved duos in history. To his fans, Conway was the high priest of country music. But to some within Nashville, his rise to the top was marked by a ruthless streak that included sabotaging rivals to protect his own place. One of Conway's most controversial habits was his control over songs. Known for his keen ear, he often secured rights to material that other singers were hoping to record. Once Conway put his name on a song, it became untouchable. For younger artists, losing out on potential hits to him was more than just disappointing. It could mean the difference between breaking through and being forgotten. Industry insiders whispered that Conway had a knack for getting to songs first, sometimes by leaning on his powerful connections. His dominance in duets also created tension. While his work with Loretta Lynn was legendary, other artists hoping to form duos found it nearly impossible to gain attention. Conway and Loretta's partnership consumed airplay and concert bookings, leaving little space for competition. Some claimed that Conway intentionally positioned himself to block other male singers from pairing with strong female voices, ensuring no one could replicate his success. Behind the scenes, Conway carried influence with labels and promoters. His status as a chart-topping machine gave him leverage to shape lineups and schedules. Younger male singers often found themselves relegated to second-tier opportunities when Conway was involved. For those trying to establish themselves, it felt like fighting against an immovable wall. Still, Conway's story is layered with contradictions. On one hand, he gave country music some of its most romantic ballads, like Hello Darlin' and Tight Fittin' Jeans, songs that remain timeless. On the other, he embodied the ruthless side of Nashville's power game, where protecting one's empire sometimes meant suffocating another's chances. In the end, Conway Twitty's legacy is both brilliant and controversial. He remains adored for his velvet voice and unforgettable catalog, yet his reputation among peers reflects a truth few fans ever saw. Conway wasn't just a star. He was a gatekeeper who made sure his throne was never threatened.